The Five Bloods, directed by Spike Lee, is one of the few films that actually haven't been postponed or canceled. Thank God, I needed this. Man. Spike Lee's new film that surprisingly came out on Netflix, one of the other few big digital releases aside from like Onward and Trolls World Tour, with apparently one of the most successful digital releases in history. Is a film all about Vietnam, post-Vietnam War America and Vietnam veterans going back to the war that they once had to go through and deal with so many years ago to rescue their long-lost brother that was left for dead, and possibly even some buried treasure that they left there so many years ago to try to finally help themselves in the situation they've been for years, and even help their people back at home that seem to be still dealing with the same things that they were dealing with 50 to 60 years ago. Here's what I thought about the movie. Almost every film that was supposed to come out this year has just been postponed and canceled, which was absolutely miserable to someone like me that, when the number one thing that I kind of need to be able to do that, unless I watch something that's already been released or something that's online now that many companies are still trying to do, there's pretty much nothing else to watch. So it was a huge shock to me that Spike Lee, out of all people, was able to get their films released on Netflix. If y'all remember, I reviewed actually another Spike Lee film about 2 years ago, I think at this point. I think it was actually one. I might be wrong about that. Yeah, I think it was one because I reviewed it back in 2019. It was BlacKkKlansman. It was actually the first and only Spike Lee film I've ever seen to this point, until I finally got to watch one of his most known films, Malcolm X. So when I heard of his new film, The Five Bloods, coming out, and specifically it being all about the 1960s, which if y'all haven't seen my Once Upon a Time in Hollywood review, go check that out. It's really good. I'm a big buff for the 60s. I love the era, I love the culture, I love the history, I love the events, I love the people, I love the artists, clearly, with my very obvious love for the Beatles that I think I made clear for like throughout how many of these years I've been doing this. So yeah, as you can tell, I'm a very big buff for the 60s. So when I heard that Spike Lee was doing a film all about the 60s, and specifically possibly one of the biggest events of that time, the Vietnam War, I was very excited. You've all seen my first review for BlacKkKlansman. I hope, please, go check that out as well. Spike Lee has always been, for me, a damn great director. Ever since I saw BlacKkKlansman, I was absolutely mostly impressed with the stories he explored and the concepts. Obviously, you can tell Spike Lee is a very politically charged person when it comes to writing the stories. They usually focus on cultural or political events that happened throughout history, mainly through the 60s and 70s. So, obviously when he's making a film about the Vietnam War, you're going to be exploring some very serious shit. And it's absolutely what I wanted right now, and what's absolutely insane is that every other reviewer has been talking about is how it almost seems like we're watching a parallel dimension of our reality that we're going through right now with the protests and political tension that's happening in our day just 50 years ago with different names and not so good technology that we have nowadays, no internet, which is just absolutely so mind-blowing to see that Spike Lee explores to the detail in this film, which, as you can tell, is really what it's all about. What I love so much about The Five Bloods is that the main focus of it is that it seems to explore the idea of we really haven't healed after Vietnam, and things really haven't gotten better here. And it seems, or at least most importantly, things seem to be repeating itself, and with everything that's going on nowadays. Out of political groups of mistrust of each other, with demonization, not so many specifically on a few more sides than others, but chaos all around, fear that things are about to hit the fan. Things are just an absolute mess, just like how they were back in the 1960s with the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam era, and, great things like the moon landing, but also assassinations, like of the great Martin Luther King Jr., or John F. Kennedy, or Malcolm X. I'm going to review that film soon. I have so much to say about it. But the point is that The Five Bloods specifically focuses on the Vietnam War, specifically for Vietnam veterans, specifically Black Vietnam veterans, going back to rescue their brother that was left behind many years ago in the war, killed in action, to try to get his body back home, and specifically even find the treasure that they all left behind many years ago to see if they can finally help themselves financially and even their people back home, something they swore to do many years ago. Spike Lee clearly has a talent for writing and his characters and how likable, lovable, relatable they can be, and this is that at its strength, at its max. I think without a doubt this is possibly my favorite cast Spike Lee has ever made in one of his films. It probably doesn't really have to do a lot with the fact that freaking Chadwick Boseman is in this film. It's absolutely mind-blowing to me that the fact that we went from this Chadwick Boseman, freaking Black Panther, buff motherfucker, to skin and bones Chadwick Boseman is just... I really am curious to see behind the scenes of how he pulled that off. I need to learn that myself, man. Every single character in this film is interesting, likable. Well, mainly the protagonists. The protagonists are likable. The bad guys are interesting, unique, and especially how a lot of these characters focused a lot on the themes that Spike Lee has explored throughout this film, of the idea how wounds haven't healed, or at least they're starting to open up again with the political tensions happening. It seems to be that people in Vietnam haven't gotten over the Vietnam War, and the Vietnam veterans haven't moved on from what has happened, and people haven't really, come to terms with what they went through and realize what has happened to them and try to fix it. So much of denial, so much of fear, so much of pain of what they experience is just explored completely throughout this film and through the characters. And it's what I absolutely love, and that's why the main characters are some of the best that I've ever seen Spike Lee do. I absolutely love how every single veteran is shown how they explored and have dealt with PTSD throughout the years and what has happened to them ever since. Some of them became very successful, some of them have been doing quite good. Some of them not so much, and some of them are an absolute train wreck and seem to be all over the place. However, it's not perfect, and it's actually a recurring theme that I noticed in a lot of Spike Lee films, that one of the main criticisms, without a doubt, that came to me as soon as the film started is Spike Lee's editing. Now, obviously, a big part of making a film is the way you cut it, the way what you show something, the shots you use, and Spike Lee, ironically, for most of it, seems to have it perfectly fine, which is why I don't get, and now that I finally got to watch Malcolm X last night, I could really tell this is more of a modern thing he started to do with a lot of his recent films. Spike Lee, ever since I saw BlacKkKlansman, I've noticed that he has this really weird technique when it comes to editing his films, where it almost feels like, for a lot of it, he's making a documentary. A documentary has a lot of pictures and a lot of stock footage of the events or topics you're talking about. And, a film about the 60s, they would have stock footage of the events that took place at the time, showing pictures of the characters or political or historical figures you're talking about. So, in the intro, it's done to perfection. Like I said, he mixes everything that I was talking about with the music and the events and what's happening, with Marvin Gaye, Inner City Blues playing in the background and showing the footage of the Vietnam War and the protests against Vietnam and the protests for civil rights and equality, all in this incredible montage to then lead us into the modern day and to start the opening with these new characters that we're going to be with. But then it just gets really weird, that especially the first half of the film, throughout it, you see that a lot of that editing that he used for the intro seems to be placed in a lot of random moments during a lot of the scenes. Specifically, one of them for me was the most notable, is that he even used for BlacKkKlansman, I even brought it up in that review a year ago, is that when characters are talking and they start bringing up like a historical figure of that time that they're bringing up, all of a sudden during mid-conversation, they'll show stock footage of who they're talking about. Like, there's one scene where they're talking about Donald Trump, and then all of a sudden while they're talking, Spike Lee just cuts to the actual clip of Donald Trump speaking. And then he has it's almost like a weird YouTube video where he even has like a weird close-up and an edit, and text shows up and with an arrow to show who he is or what he's talking about. And it's just, once again, for a YouTube video or for a documentary, that 100% makes sense. You have to explore the topic you're doing to the detail, and you have to show people what it is and explain to them what it is. But when you're making a film about a story and about characters, and especially a fictional story, to bring them all of a sudden into reality and take them out of that experience and just start giving them pretty much a history lesson just seems out of place and doesn't really seem to mix well with the main story he's talking about throughout the film. And that's why, for me, it happens, especially once again through the first half of the film. It gets way better by the end, where that seems to go away. But it's something that bothered me and my friend and I that watched it for the first time, that we noticed through a lot of the film. Characters will just be having conversations, and it just cuts to random stock footage or random pictures of things, and it really just takes you out of the experience. In conclusion, Spike Lee once again has brought his absolute A-game to another film, with his incredible cinematography, his incredible writing, and his incredible characters, once again exploring a unique story about a genre of films, a specific subgenre of war films that have seemed to be overdone to the dead cow and the dead cow's corpse, with so many Vietnam films being released, but being a unique story about a post-war Vietnam and how characters have learned to handle it, and explore a lot of the themes and topics of the idea that maybe we really haven't moved on for that. And it seems to be even worse, that the events and chaos that happened back in the 60s seem to be repeating itself once again in our modern day. And it's a film right now that I think really all of us need to see, or at least need to start talking about, of the ideas that, it seems to be that things aren't getting better, and it seems to be that tensions are rising again more than ever, and things to be really starting to hit the fan. And what better way to explore that than a decade that was all about the fears of shit hitting the fan, the 1960s. And Da 5 Bloods explores that perfectly. I'm going to give Da 5 Bloods an 8.5 out of 10. Absolute great film with a wonderful cast, and incredible characters, and an incredible story, with some odd editing that brings down the film and gets really distracting, especially in the beginning. Guys, that's what I thought of Da 5 Bloods. Have you seen it? Are you happy the fact that we finally get to see a new release not get postponed for once? Oh my god, you have no idea how happy I was to see a new film come out. Either way though, let me know in the comments below what you want me to watch, because clearly I have plenty of time right now on my hands, especially now that we're finally officially in the summer. Summer and quarantine. Oh my god, I'll let this be over soon. Everyone be safe, please. Do this. It's not that hard. You want to help end this? This is all you got to do. It could be annoying. It's specifically for me, it fogs up my glasses. It gets really annoying. But I can handle it. If I can handle this, there's no reason you can't. It's not the end of the world for this. It's not the greatest cruelty and biggest pain, and it's not the fucking deep state trying to take over the world. Please stay safe right now. Be responsible. This will be over soon. Enjoy a new film that's finally been released again. It's been a while that we've actually been able to enjoy a new release, so let's enjoy this to the max. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a lovely day. See you guys.